The night sky over the Teutoburg hills was a black canvas, but the forest below whispered a promise of annihilation that would echo through the ages. What if an entire empire could be erased by a single silent strike? If that thought sends a shiver down your spine, tell me in the comments what you think about the power of surprise. Ancient legions marched in rigid columns, their shields gleaming, their formations designed for open fields where discipline could dominate. The principal limitation of this era was the inability to hide an army behind nature's veil. Any movement was visible on the plains, any approach detectable by scouts. The decisive innovation arrived when the Germanic chieftain Obios, led by Arminius, turned the dense, mist-cloaked forest into a living trap. By weaving their forces through the underbrush, they concealed thousands of warriors until the Roman legions of Publius Quinctilius Varus entered the kill zone. In the year 9, the Romans were ambushed in the Teutoburg forest, their marching columns shattered by sudden, ferocious attacks from hidden warriors. The result was catastrophic. 3 legions vanished, the Roman Empire's expansion into Germania stalled, and a fortified frontier along the Rhine was erected for centuries to come. Yet the forest itself remained a static element. The ambush still depended on terrain that could not be moved, leaving open plains untouched and inviting the next evolution. Open fields demanded a new kind of deception, one that could lure an enemy into a trap without the cover of trees. The lingering limitation was the inability to execute an ambush where the ground offered no concealment. The breakthrough came from the steppes, where speed and feigned retreat could become the veil. In the year 1223, the Mongol commander Subutai lured the Rus princes across the Kalka River with a staged withdrawal, drawing them into a narrow valley where hidden horse archers waited. The Rus forces, believing they had driven the enemy away, turned to pursue, only to be encircled and annihilated by the swift Mongol cavalry. This feigned retreat transformed ambush doctrine, proving that mobility and psychological manipulation could replace static terrain. The permanent consequence was the spread of steppe tactics across Eurasia, reshaping warfare for generations. However, the Mongol method still relied on close-quarter melee after the initial lure, exposing a gap in firepower that could soften the enemy before the final strike. The next hurdle was the brutal cost of close combat after a surprise attack. Armies could be broken, but at great loss. The unresolved limitation was the lack of a coordinated ranged barrage to weaken foes before the melee began. The innovation emerged in the Levant, where disciplined archers could rain arrows from elevated positions, creating a lethal curtain of fire. In the year 1187, Saladin's forces chose the ridge of Mount Tabor to conceal a massed line of bowmen and crossbowmen, waiting for the Crusader army to cross the plain of Hattin. As the Crusaders entered the valley, the hidden archers unleashed a torrent of bolts, sowing panic and disarray. The Crusader cavalry, unable to form up, was forced into a chaotic retreat, only to be cut down by Saladin's infantry and cavalry converging from the hills. The Battle of Hattin ended with the Crusader army shattered, the Kingdom of Jerusalem falling, and a new era of Muslim dominance in the Holy Land. This ambush demonstrated that integrating ranged firepower into the surprise attack could decimate an enemy before close combat, yet it still depended on a fixed high ground that limited its application to specific terrain. Firearms would soon render static high ground insufficient, demanding concealment that could survive the crack of gunpowder. The lingering limitation was the inability to hide and coordinate rifle fire in open terrain, where traditional ambushes were exposed to disciplined infantry equipped with muskets. The breakthrough arrived on the Great Plains, where Native American warriors combined intimate knowledge of the land with concealed rifle positions and synchronized volleys. In the year 1876, the combined forces of Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse set a trap for the 7th Cavalry under General Custer near the Little Bighorn River. They concealed riflemen among the rolling hills and grasses, timing their fire to coincide with the cavalry's charge. As Custer's troops surged forward, a sudden, coordinated burst of rifle fire ripped through their ranks, causing chaos and preventing any organized response. The ambush culminated in the complete destruction of the 7th Cavalry, a decisive victory that shocked the United States and altered the course of the Indian Wars. This event cemented the principle that concealed, rapid rifle fire could dominate an ambush even against disciplined modern troops, yet it still suffered from limited communication across dispersed units, a flaw that would drive the next evolutionary leap. The lingering limitation of fragmented voice-to-voice contact across scattered riflemen demanded a method to bind distant elements into a single, synchronized pulse. The decisive breakthrough arrived in the dense, mist-shrouded Ardennes of Western Europe, where the German High Command equipped its assault formations with portable, frequency-modulated radios capable of transmitting orders in real time over dozens of kilometers. In the cold dawn of December 1944, A coalition of panzer divisions, infantry regiments and stormtrooper battalions slipped silently through the snow-capped hills, each unit listening to a common broadcast that timed the strike to the exact moment the Allied forward observers lowered their binoculars. When the first artillery shells cracked the stillness, the radio-linked armor surged forward in a coordinated wave, catching the American and British forces in a sudden, enveloping firestorm. The ambush shattered the Allied front, forced a chaotic withdrawal that exposed supply lines, and delayed the advance into Germany for weeks. This operation proved that a shared mobile communications network could transform a scattered ambush into a coordinated multi-axis surprise, yet it still relied on analog signals that could be intercepted, jammed, or mistuned, a vulnerability that would drive the next evolutionary leap. The next unsolved flaw lay in the susceptibility of voice-based radio to enemy interception and the inability to fuse aerial eyes with ground ears in the split second before contact. The answer emerged in the desert expanses of the Persian Gulf, where coalition forces integrated satellite-based positioning with encrypted data links, allowing every tank, scout vehicle, and artillery piece to see the same digital map in real time. In the early hours of February 1991, a United States Armored Cavalry regiment, guided by a global positioning system that displayed the exact coordinates of an Iraqi mechanized column, positioned itself along a narrow, dust-laden track known as the 73 Easting. As the enemy convoy entered the kill zone, the coalition's forward observers, perched on a hilltop, transmitted a single encrypted pulse that triggered a cascade of fire from dozens of M1 Abrams tanks, each firing precisely on the coordinates displayed on their screens. The ambushed Iraqi forces, unaware that their own movements were being plotted on a digital grid, were cut down in a matter of minutes, their tanks exploding in a chorus of fire and steel. The battle demonstrated that satellite navigation and encrypted, computer-mediated communication could eliminate the guesswork of terrain and timing, delivering a pinpoint ambush with surgical precision. Yet the reliance on electronic hardware introduced a new limitation. The entire strike could be crippled by a single loss of signal, a fragility that would compel the next generation of ambush designers to embed resilience into the network itself. The unresolved weakness of a single point of failure in digital communications called for a system that could survive disruption, share sensor data instantly across air, land, and sea, and adapt on the fly. The breakthrough unfolded in the war-torn streets of Mosul, where Iraqi security forces, supported by coalition air assets, deployed a mesh of unmanned aerial vehicles, ground-based acoustic sensors, and handheld tablets that formed a self-healing data fabric. In the bitter winter of 2016, a coordinated team of Iraqi infantry, special operations operators, and Kurdish Peshmerga set a trap for a retreating pocket of Islamic State fighters attempting to slip through a ruined bridge. As the insurgents emerged, a swarm of microdrones hovered above, feeding live video and thermal signatures into a shared battlefield picture that updated on every soldier's tablet. When the enemy's flank was exposed, the mesh automatically rerouted the command signal to the nearest functional node, allowing a rapid-fire mission from a nearby artillery battery and a synchronized assault by ground troops. The ambush collapsed the insurgent column within minutes, the enemy's own tunnels and hideouts revealed by the sensor network and struck before they could react. This operation proved that a distributed sensor-rich network could sustain an ambush even when individual links were lost, but it still depended on a constant flow of electronic data that could be denied by a powerful electromagnetic pulse, a risk that would shape the final evolutionary step. The final unsolved challenge was the threat of a deliberate electromagnetic blackout that could erase every digital trace, leaving commanders blind and unable to coordinate a surprise strike. The answer arrived on the high-altitude plateaus of Nagorno-Karabakh, where Azerbaijani forces combined low-observable, autonomous loitering munitions with pre-programmed, terrain-based timing cues that required no real-time radio or satellite input. In the early morning of September 2020, a battalion of loitering drones, each equipped with a compact inertial navigation system and a stored flight plan, lifted from concealed launch pads hidden among rocky outcrops. The drones hovered silently above the Armenian defensive line, their engines muted by the thin air, while ground crews activated a series of acoustic triggers buried in the valley floor. When the first artillery shell from the Armenian side rang out, the acoustic signal reached the drones, prompting them to dive in a coordinated wave directly onto the enemy positions, detonating on impact with precision. The ambush unfolded without a single radio transmission, without a single satellite ping, and without any electronic signature that could be jammed. The resulting devastation shattered the forward defensive line, forced a rapid retreat, and demonstrated that a fully pre-programmed, sensor-independent strike could achieve surprise even in the face of total electronic denial. The permanent consequence of this encounter was the validation of autonomous, timing-based ambushes that could operate in a radio-silent environment, closing the evolutionary loop that began with simple concealment and ending with self-contained, technology-driven surprise. Each of these 8 milestones, from the early concealment of archers on a sun-baked ridge, through the coordinated rifle fire of the Great Plains, the radio-linked thunder of the Ardennes, the GPS-guided strike at the 73 Easting, the mesh network trap in Mosul, and finally the autonomous loitering assault on the Karabakh Plateau, illustrates a single, unbroken thread, the relentless pursuit of perfect surprise. The documentary has traced that thread across centuries, continents, and technologies, showing how every limitation sparked an innovation that reshaped the very nature of an ambush. The pattern is clear, the evolution undeniable, and the promise of the title fulfilled. If this journey through the greatest ambushes has sparked your curiosity, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more deep dives into the moments that changed history, consider subscribing and giving this video a like. Your support keeps the stories alive. Thank you for watching.